It's Friday in the summer. Well, good afternoon, depending on where in the world you are tuning in from. My name is Cate Luzio. I'm the founder and CEO of Luminary and also the host of Goaldigger. And we have actually taken about a 6-week hiatus from Goaldigger. I've been leading another LinkedIn live show called Navigating the Work Compass with my co-host, Susan Chapman-Hughes. But we were not thinking of coming back until September with Goaldigger, but then the amazing Allie Brown was able to make her schedule work in August. And so we're actually kicking it off a little bit early. And I'm so excited to bring Allie Brown. And you're going to learn a lot about her if you don't already know her. So welcome, Allie.
Oh, this is going to be fun. So great to see you, Cate.
You too. I know our last couple of conversations have been on the phone.
Yeah. Even though I'm sick of Zoom, like when it's a new person, you're like, oh, hi. And then I'm looking around your house, I'm like, that's nice. That's nice. Let's check it out.
Someone did that to me the other day. They're like, where are you sitting? I'm like, well, this is our beach house and I'm sitting in the kitchen. And they're like, oh, I love that kitchen. Could you move your head so I could see the
Take us on a tour.
So welcome. It is Friday in August, and Goaldigger is all about learning the stories of incredible leaders, their pivots, how they've adapted, kind of where they came from. Kind of all of it started for you here in New York City, although you're no longer based in New York. But can you give the audience just a little bit of a snapshot on your journey and sort of what led you to where you are today? And by the way, I should mention, Allie is the founder and CEO of the Trust, but so much more. And we're going to learn about all these different turns that have led her to creating the Trust. But I'm going to turn it over to you.
Yeah, it's been a wild ride. And in fact, I saw someone putting a great quote up yesterday. So I think it was yesterday, the day before, saying, you don't reach 7 figures with 7 streams of income. And that's kind of how I started. There was one point, I think even before I moved to New York, when I was in Boston, I went to school there and stayed there a few years. There was one point I was trying to work full time at a publishing company, but I was so restless riding my bicycle around selling vitamins. I got hooked up with some network marketing company and teaching step aerobics. And Cate, I think we're at the age that you would remember that as well. Okay.
Yeah.
Ooh, yeah. So I just love trying things on. And so it's been a key of my success, but it could also be my shadow side because I get bored really easily. But man, that really served me. And so when I landed in New York, I was still feeling very unemployable, but I landed this, just by the grace of God, this perfect job. It was on like 33rd or 34th Street. It was more that fashion district, but it was this little ad agency run by these 2 bumbling, like old men. And they had just landed this healthcare client. And my background, the company I worked for before, just happened to be healthcare. I never set out to, learn all that, but I was working on writing and editing for all these publications. And so I walked in and they said, great, you're account manager for this. I mean, it was really like they shoved me like in a cube and said, this hospital wants to publish a magazine. Do you know how to do that? I'm like, well, okay, yeah, because I knew how it worked. I didn't know how to do it. So I went in there, and this was the fun part. I got to create all the systems because from my last company, I learned all this. So, and they're like, wow, these guys are like 60 and I'm like 26 or something. I'm like, yeah, and then you do it this way. It was the funniest thing. It was such a great experience though, because I got to really build that confidence to say, you know what, I know something and I'm pretty smart and I'm going to figure this out.
Yeah.
And that lasted about a year and a half because, these guys were nice, but the place was crazy. Like every time Tony's rabbi came in, the copier broke. And I mean, we have these stories, like I got to put in a book one day, like stuff would break all the time because he'd let his neighbors all come in and use stuff. And there was one bathroom with 10 people and 2 women. So put together what that looked like. And I was restless. And then the turning point for me, and this is something for people to pay attention to, when there's a shift in awareness, you can't go back.
Yeah.
And there was this freelancer that came and went named Eric, and he'd go work in like Bryant Park or he'd work in the Hamptons and he'd come back tan and he would bring back his projects. And I'm like, psst, how do I do what you do? Like, that looks really fun. Can I do what I do, but like at home or on my own? Or like, this was a whole new concept for me. You guys got to remember, this was pre-internet. This is where we sound ancient, right?
Oh, I know.
But I loved that, Cate, because I had nothing to compare it to.
Right.
Like, all I had was what was in front of me. And this was so exciting. And so once I learned that I could make a pretty good living, or at least eke one out in New York, freelancing, that was the next leap. And people say, where you
was that? What year was that, to put it into context?
98.
98.
Yeah. Yeah, so the number one song was probably like Macarena? I don't know.
Yeah.
Let's take it back, right?
Yeah. Well, I'm
Maybe
trying to,
earlier.
yeah, I graduated college in 97, so I'm trying to think what that, but this is
Yeah.
not only pre sort of the boom of the internet. This is way before like the gig economy and anything
Oh,
where women in
this was
particular were,
bizarre.
I could
This
have a
was bizarre. I
yeah,
couldn't tell my parents for probably a good 2 or 3 months. I
yeah,
mean, no one worked for themselves, no one freelanced. This was like, you know, I felt like this strange bird that never fit in anywhere.
right.
Yeah. And then the short story from there, what happened is, I started doing these copywriting jobs and would walk into these ad agencies because this is how we did things back then. We talked to people and showed up,
Yeah.
right? And
Meeting.
and yeah, I don't even know how we researched companies. You'd like go walk in there and look around. Like I don't even remember how I even knew how to do this, but I would walk in, give them my portfolio, say, "Hey, I'm a freelance copywriter. I can also do project management. Do you have any work for me?" And this just started building. What the turning point, though, really for the online world is when I got on. Remember the AOL CD? Oh my God!
Oh yeah.
And got online and was like, "Oh my gosh, I could share what I know with people." There are people asking me how I'm doing what I'm doing when I meet them. How are you freelancing and how are you doing this? So I started a little email newsletter in like a group on my
Like a
address book.
list.
In a little group, which you can't do today. I mean, but back then you could do it because it's the only way you knew how. And started to build a following. When people asked me things, I would turn around and teach it. I started creating courses, and little by little, like, did teleseminars when they were on the phone, and then workshops, and then coaching, and then it just kind of steamrolled because I was really at the forefront at that time of that online marketing world. And today I wouldn't consider myself an online marketer by any means. I'm kind of glad I've graduated past that box in
Yeah.
in my mind. There's so many better qualified people to help you today in tune with what's going on. But that gave me such good principles in marketing and learning what works and confidently getting the word out to people.
So the foundation, you built a massive foundation. You're trailblazing, particularly in that world, way before even. I mean, you think about it now. Everybody has sort of it can is tries to monetize content and advice and tips, but you were doing that way earlier than most of the people that we know and love today.
Oh yeah. People didn't know what an email newsletter was.
Right.
I mean, I kind of miss those days though, when it was just like guns a-blazing, like doing all this new stuff. But it gave me such a good, that's where a lot of women who still follow me today say, "Oh, I bought one of your courses." To my horror, sometimes they'll still have it, like, and the graphics are terrible, or it's back when it was a photo of me with like a pile of cash, like,
Yeah.
like back that, like the stuff that we did, that's what was in back then. And yeah, and that's where it all started today, that led to today.
And so much, do you think so much of that content that you put out there way in the beginning, obviously things have evolved as far as the technology, et cetera, but so much of that content, I would assume, is still relevant today.
What people say I did really well was always take it back to the principles of things.
Right.
So, marketing principles don't change. Psychology principles don't change. The methods we use will change. So everyone right now, of course, everything marketing is social right now. People don't, if you mention anything, even like doing a direct mail piece, people are like, what?
What?
You know,
Yeah.
and that's a dangerous place to be though, with all your eggs in one basket. But that's where it is, right? So, but if you back it up though, and always come back to the principles of marketing, like, so who is your market? What is your message? And what is the best media to reach them with? These types of things I really drilled in people's heads. And I'm like, listen, I know the sexy stuff's over here, but we gotta stick with this. And
Right.
if you always come back and revisit that, and even clients today, Kate, it's interesting because I have women walk through my doors for private coaching, 7, 8 figure businesses. And we always got to go back there, right? Because often we get caught up in this mishmash of tactics, and we're doing this and we have this whole Instagram thing going on. Like, let's back it up: market, message, media.
Yeah, core foundational. I mean, that actually, I mean, we talked about it. I had the pleasure and the honor of being on your podcast, a few weeks ago. And one of the things, I'm a new entrepreneur, right? If I had met you, call it even 5 years ago, I would have said, Allie, like, why are we meeting? Because I was a banker. I had no idea that I was ever going to start my own company. And to be honest, I would have said, absolutely, I'd never start my own company. I don't even know I would not even know how to do that. And I think thinking about the core background and experience and all the foundational knowledge that I actually obtained and built and honed those skills over the last 20 plus years in corporate America, that's actually what led me to be able to launch the business. So, back to basics and that core foundation. So you can talk a little, so you are literally a world renowned, coach. You have this incredible podcast. You are working with founders and women of all different backgrounds. And then you decide, and I want to talk a little bit about each of those components, but then you decide that you are going to build and launch the trust. Before we get to the trust, can you talk about some of your clients and sort of where they get this, I can't move forward, or I'm not able to move forward, especially those that are trying to, and we know this, well, maybe not everybody knows the statistics, but for every dollar that a male entrepreneur makes, a woman earns 30 cents on that dollar, right? So there are still so few entrepreneurs, and I talk about self-funded, bootstrap, not the VC backed, that are still under 6 figures, never mind 7 figures.
Yeah. Gosh, it's a loaded conversation,
no,
isn't it? No, but it's a good one. And I think the important thing to remember about this is that women are so multidimensional that I think there's a few factors at play. Are there true things holding us back? I don't know if I agree with that. I'm happy to have a deeper conversation about that at some point. Because once you work for yourself, it's interesting though. We often psychologically put ourselves back in a box of rules, and then want to feel. It's almost a safety place. I think women play sometimes, feeling victimized is too strong a word. I don't know the right word for this right now, but feeling like, but I'm only a woman business owner, or I'm only, I'm doing pretty well for a mom business owner, or you know what I mean? So let's put that aside, because that gets too way too deep and psychological. So when you look at just the realities of things, there are a few places that women get stuck. We can go into the whys another time, but they get stuck typically. In my observation, this is over 20 years of working with women all levels, as I used to. The low 6 figures, I would say, is kind of somewhere they get comfortable. And there's many different types of businesses, whether you have products or services, but generally, around that low, I'd say like the 150 to 250 range. It's a comfy place for a lot of women, right? It's kind of comfy. There's probably either a scaling issue that they would need to look at to get to that next level. And maybe it's either something, honestly, and it's okay that it's maybe not something they're willing to do, because women are very holistic workers, right? So there's no shame in hanging out around that level. If you're making a great living for you and your family and it works, so some people ask me, are you all about just that 7 figures? I'm like, dear Lord, no. There's sometimes I tell women, I'm like, you know what? You got a good thing going on. You're working, X hours, and you're with your kids, and you're banking some cash. Don't mess it up, don't go hire 20 people and then be working, 60 hours a week and whatever plans they have. So we really think through it. And then the second is just under that 7 figures. If they can get, though, really in that high 6 figures, typically, just a few small tweaks often can really push them over. But that's where I think it may be psychological sometimes. There's typically a decision they have to make that they've been resisting. And that could be a big team change. It could be a belief that they don't think they can scale the business and not have to work like a dog, which is a fair thing to be concerned about, right? But there's almost always a way. There's a different way to do this. Where you get trapped is looking at models, and people go into these industries and they look at the model and they say, this is exactly the model I need to do, which was often invented by, by men, right?
White man.
Men are awesome. They build things. So we go that worked. Let's model it, right? But then we get into it and we say, you know what, this is cool, but this part doesn't work for me, and I'm going to change this. So we're inventing the new models. That's the magic I want to make sure everyone takes in right now. Cate, you invented a new model for your industry. You saw what was out there and said, well, yeah, that's all cool. Okay. Yeah, maybe that doesn't work. Here's what I think the women I know need. And you went and created it. And that's where I want every woman listening to really hold that thought and that power in the decisions they're making. It's going to feel strange because we are creating the new models.
And I think there's still, I mean, you talk about, the psychological, I go back to just that example I gave. I never would have thought I could build, launch, self fund my own company, right? That was just not, I'm a Gen Xer. I always had a job. I was always going to that climbing the corporate ladder milestone. And by the way, that doesn't mean I'll never go back to that. I actually loved the corporate environment, but there was just this sort of, I'm just an X. I'm just a banker. Like, why would anyone listen to me? And I think so. I
Yeah.
do think there's that psychological. And then when you think about the revenue piece, it's how do you have a plan and get there? You mentioned, Allie, something about work like a dog, right? I think there's also this. I don't know if it's an assumption. It's like, well, once I start to make that money, I don't have to work as hard. And I think, knowing what Luminary is doing, I think that's actually completely the opposite. It's like the more you're making, the more you're investing in your business, the more people you're hiring, the more you have to work.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah. It sometimes it's part of the model and people get very upset. I'm like, I don't know what to tell you. Like,
Yeah.
it just, you're gonna have to work a bit. But I think where it gets really not even uncomfortable, but detrimental is when your work doesn't align with your values.
Right.
So there's times you're going to be fired up, like, and be like, I'm okay working this way. And we've all been there, right? Like you're there Friday nights working on a business plan. You're so excited, or you just hired some great new team and you do 5 days straight of meetings and you're jacked up because everything's going to finally get done. And then there's times though that you may, like, I found myself in a place, and it's a longer conversation, but probably about once I finally met Brett. I say finally because I waited a long time for a
Yeah.
good partner, and miraculously had twins quite naturally. That's another fun story. Be careful, ladies. It still could have twins. I mean, you can't make this up. This all happened very quickly, and man, that got me to think about what's important to me. I'm
Mm.
like, wow, I'm actually having a family, and met this amazing man, and like my whole life's changing. And I was feeling a little uncomfortable for a while anyway, but I had built this model, man. I couldn't get out of it.
Yeah.
I could not get out of this model. I remember having planned these events for a program I was running, this huge program, hundreds and hundreds of members. And we had like all this stuff going on, and the coaches working for me. And it was a great program, and the people loved it, and it really helped them. But I was starting to go like, oh gosh, I think I want something different. Is that okay? And I remember being on stage 7 months pregnant with twins and trying to go rest. And we were getting some complaints that I wasn't on stage enough. And that, I'm glad that happened, Cate, because that's what pushed me over the edge.
Yeah.
I was like, you know what? And it wasn't the good clients. It's the ones that always complain about everything if you don't have
Right.
soy milk and,
Oat
you know
milk,
what I mean?
almond milk.
Yeah. Like once you start doing that, those people just, they want to run all over you. And I needed to hear that, because I was like, okay, I needed the 2x4 in the head saying, you know what? This is my game. This is my life.
Right.
I'm burning out my adrenals. I'm trying to still work this hard while I'm pregnant. Like, I mean, just and women often need a point like that they step back. And right now is a great time to have this conversation, because women right now are making huge decisions, probably about making changes in their lives.
Mm-hmm.
The world's a crazy, scary place right now. Some people may be wanting to change careers, or say, finally, you know what? I don't want to go back to the office. Maybe I will start something.
Right.
Maybe I could work for someone virtually. There's so many options, ladies. Please take this in. But you may need something, man, to hit to kind of wake you up and go like, okay, that's it. I'm ready. I'm going to do this. And I very carefully and cautiously and with a lot of care started dismantling what I had created, and completely then rebuilding something in the new direction.
So let's talk about the new direction, and let's talk about so Allie, you and I got connected, and it was like fast friends, right? I think it was like, oh my gosh, we're both creating something pretty, I think, amazing. And the first thing when people put two women's organizations sort of together or connected, they're like, well, we hope you don't compete and we hope there's no competition. And what I've always said since I launched Luminary was collaboration over competition, right? And so how do you figure out a win-win of organizations working together, particularly women? raising each other up, women of color, underserved communities. And so let's talk about the trust, because the moment I heard about the trust, I was intrigued. My buddy Kara Golden was like, Cate, you got to know about the trust. So shout out to Kara, and many others. But talk about why you've created the trust, what it is, and what's its purpose.
When I started getting into the seven, as soon as I broke through that 7-figure mark, I was excited because I know that milestone gets you invited into a lot of different circles, right? And so years ago, when I finally passed that milestone, I'm like, great, I can go join these groups and these business clubs, and especially, what's out there and see what's out there for women. And for women, there's like, and today there's like equality gaps and wealth gaps.
Yep.
Well, there's a women's network gap.
Mm-hmm.
There is there's like this weird middle space where nothing happens. And it's either like a lot of beginner groups,
Yep.
if you're looking and that's fine for networking and connecting. And again, I'm looking where you're going to get, business information and network with people at your own level. There's times that you don't care. And there's other groups that I'm still part of that aren't based on revenue, but I was looking for that because I wanted to be around people with that conversation. And all the groups I was finding were really almost kind of dumbing down information for women. There's an infantilization of women's business topics, like the whole boss babe. And look, I can look like a boss babe, but that whole boss babe, bitch, badass.
Yeah.
Like, that's kind of what you get, right? And then there's this gap of like nothing. And then up here are the $1 million plus orgs. So I started tapping into some great networks and some really interesting people. And I'm thinking, you know what? I want to pull some of my clients in and create something new, because I was sending them to some of these other organizations and they're like, this isn't really my flavor, or they're nice women, but they're very outdated industries. And, I just didn't, I want something from you. They kept coming back to me and I'm like, I'm too tired. I don't have time, like every reason in the world. And then finally I decided, I knew about end of 2019. I'm like, okay, now is the time, because I have so many women coming to me saying, can you create something for all these amazing women you attract?
Yeah.
And that's when I decided to create the trust. And then the other part of it, Cate, was I was starting to think, what's my legacy play? What am I leaving here? What can I leave here that's not attached to me, but was led by me and birthed by me? And that's why I wanted to create the trust. So the trust is a network for women who are over the 7-figure mark. The average revenues in there right now, I think, are around 5 million, but it stretches up to 50. And we have women from every type of industry, color, age, shape, size. The diversity we've attracted naturally is probably one of my biggest points of pride. I'm just blown away by these women and the conversations they have with each other, and how we can also have conversations about things going on in the world quite civilly, maybe how it used to be offline. I don't know. Just a great group. And we have live events. We have a lot of online, of course, and they can learn more at jointhetrust.org.
Jointhetrust.org. And so
I forgot to give you that earlier. We were talking about me.
I'm going to put it in one of the banners as I multitask. Yeah. But when I think of the statistics, right, that I talked about earlier, that there's still a very low percentage that even make over 6 figures, and then even lower over 7 figures. There's also a lot of solopreneurs, right, that where do they go, where do they get access information? And I think that's one of the things that I love about Luminary and the trust is you've got sort of where people are on the spectrum and what they're coming for. And oh, by the way, we can all have multiple groups that we tap into for different things, right?
Oh, yeah. People don't join only one network typically.
Exactly.
Right? They're part of a few things going on. And I think that's that's a smart strategy. You don't want to get all your information from one source, and there's different flavors, different places,
So when you think about a founder or a business owner that is on that cusp, right, and they really need that push over the edge, so much of it, are you on all the social media platforms? Are you doing this? Are you doing that? When you think of the hundreds, if not thousands of entrepreneurs, business owners, women that you've coached, is it just, what are some of the things that hold us back?
Things that'll push you kind of over that 7-figure mark, if you're feeling stuck, is the first thing I do is, look, and I'm going to walk you through what I would typically do with a client too. We look at all the numbers, right? What are your leads coming in? Who's your prospective pool of people who would actually come in and work with you or buy this? Then the leads, and then the sales. What are your price points? Women typically undercharge, and
Yep.
it's okay at first, but like if you're not getting any, I mean, if you're closing every single sale you get, if you're getting people even saying, "Wow, like this, you charge too little." Hello, I mean, we will listen to this for a while, and then eventually, I don't know, it takes us a little longer, raise it. So it could be raising your prices, it could be ramping up your marketing. But the key then is to really look objectively at your numbers, because
Mhm.
that can tell you a lot. If you're getting a ton of leads, but not many sales, look
Right.
at what you're offering. If you're getting great sales and everything's working, but you want to make more money, look at your revenues, look at your profits. How can you charge more and add more value, right? So the model may need a shift. Very interesting thing I see a lot of women do as well is they cater immediately to having, like, especially ones in the services or especially coaching, consulting, these spaces, they have too many offerings. They
Right.
have, and I fell into this as well. When I was doing a lot more TV 10 years ago, I did ABC, Secret Millionaire, all this stuff. We had, I had everything from 100 grand private coaching program to $10 a month, for you and your dog. Like,
Right.
it was
Right. Right.
practically, yeah, we were just, because I felt like, oh, well, these people, I want to serve them. I want to help them too.
Right.
And that's where we come from, right? But you got to pick your lane. Like, who is that special market that you're going to work with? All these people who go to the masses, it's a rare occurrence that they really hit it big. Once in a while, you'll see that. But otherwise, you got to really pick your lane. That's why, Cate, you've done so well with what you've created, because there's other people who kind of tried to do it, but you really have that personal connection and knowing, the type of woman who wants to be in luminary.
Right.
I'll tell you prediction very quickly. Like, when you see everything start getting weird right now, kind of blowing up in the world, and going back to these smaller communities where we are super tight, that's the future.
Yeah.
That's going to be the future. And all this mass marketing, like the TikTok stuff, and I hope it all blows up, honestly. Hearts hate to say, but like, we need to get back to real conversations with real people. And so look at how you can truly serve people at this moment.
I love that. I think you kind of hit the nail on the head around there are so many, and I talk to and advise and consult with founders, all over that. You look at their offerings and it's too much. It's like, I can't even figure out what not even what lane, like you're doing every stroke possible while you're swimming. Right. And so I
Mm,
think this picking that lane, I know I hate, because I could talk to you for hours and hours. We have a couple minutes left. When you think about you, right? So you continue to impact, again, the so many business owners. You've got your podcast, you speak, you've got the trust, and I'll put the in the chat. I'm sorry, in the banner so people can find out more. But where do you think that came from for you in finding your voice and continuing to kind of push forward? Is that something that came from when you were growing up? Is that just over time it developed? Where did it come from?
yeah. I think my 20s was like trying it on. 20s were kind of a mess, right? And for some of us, it is. 20s about having some fun and dating the wrong man, and but I was always I was always a bit of a troublemaker, right? So school, I remember looking back now, in school, I was bored half the time, and I realize now, and I'm happy to say it, that because I was very smart, and I
Yeah.
would get very bored. And that, the public school I grew up near, which was, a wonderful school, nice teachers, but I always felt like I wanted to have different conversations, and this stuff was boring me, and I could not show up and still make honor roll. I mean, you know, and so I've always been a bit of a it's interesting because I have an event called Iconic, but I'm really more of an iconoclast. I like seeing the systems that need to be fixed and what needs to be totally blown up and changed. And so I think that's been a common thread for me, which is why in the end it was a gift for me never to fit in, because it was not the leader I was meant to become.
I love that. That's that right there. That's a great tagline, by the way. I hope you use that. We were recording it because I think,
TM. Yeah, sorry.
right?
Just kidding.
Because I think for women in particular, women of color, that we try to fit into that, right? We try to
Yeah.
fit into everyone else's definition of success. Number one, what it means to be a leader, what are the characteristic and skills you have to use, and you've done it your own way, which has allowed you to really continue to be that goal digger, and using, not only using your voice for you, but for so many others. I'm going to put in the banners. You can follow Allie on Instagram at Allie Brown Official. You can find out more about everything that Allie's doing, and how to work with Allie at alliebrown.com. And then certainly back to this incredible organization that she's building, the Trust, jointhetrust.org. And hopefully in September, we'll do some great programming collaborations between Luminary and the Trust that Allie.
Yeah, we're cooking something up.
Yes, behind the scenes. But Allie, it's amazing to have you. It's just amazing to see what you've built, and all of, in particular, the women that you're helping to hit whatever definition of success they're looking for, coming from you and your coaching and certainly your advocacy. So thank you for everything that you do. And I'm looking forward to what we're going to do together.
Me too. This is fantastic, Cate. Thank you.
And everyone, thank you for joining. Again, we're back, Goaldigger, now every Friday around 11 or 12 Eastern, depending on where our guests are located. We don't want to get them too early. Thank you for joining. As always, stay safe and stay healthy. We are not through this yet. We're seeing, and I hate to be political, resurgence and everything that's going on. So just protect yourself, and hopefully we can all be together in person soon. Have a great weekend, everyone. Take care.
Have hope.
Have hope. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Hold the hope.
Hold the hope. Thanks, everyone. See you next week on Goaldigger.